Hi, thank you for joining us for the Park Ridge Park District special board meeting. We're going to get started in a second, but I just wanted to do a little housekeeping details. On the right of your screen as an attendee, you will see a questions feature. If you want to submit a public comment, please use the questions. Those will come directly to me and I will read those during the public comment section of the meeting. There is also a raise hand feature. We ask you not to do that. Getting feedback, sorry. As an audience monitoring member, you cannot speak. You're muted and you cannot be unmuted. So we just wanted to let you know that. So we can get started now. Harmony?
Good evening. I now call to order the special board meeting of the Park Ridge Park District Board of Park Commissioners. Today is Thursday, April 23rd, 2020, and the time is 7:06 p.m. We are not at Prospect Park. We are virtual due to the COVID-19 crisis. May we please do our roll call?
Sure. Commissioner Coyne?
Here.
Commissioner Grau? Commissioner Grau? Commissioner Leduc? Here. Commissioner Leach?
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Commissioner Tunnell?
Here.
Commissioner Harrington?
Here.
I'll just say it one more time for Commissioner Grau. All
In the
right.
chat box, it says she cannot unmute. She's here.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to amend, add, or delete to our current agenda? Give a little time for the time delay here or folks to come off mute, but hearing none, I'd like to move to the next section of the agenda, our public comment period for non-agenda items. So I know we have some folks joining us who are not commissioners nor Park Ridge Park District staff. Does anyone have any public comments to share with the board?
I'm going to give it a couple of seconds to give them time to type if they would like to.
We need some typing music.
Yeah, I don't have any.
Okay. Seeing no public comment at this time, I'd like to move on to the approval of minutes. So I move to approve the regular board meeting minutes of Thursday, April 2nd, 2020. This action will be formally ratified at an actual board meeting with physical presence at a later date. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or edits needed to those minutes? Hearing none.
I had one small correction that I emailed to Marianne on the top of page 7, top paragraph. It should have said Commissioner Leduc thanked Superintendent DeAngelis for her hard work during this difficult time and asked if a motion is needed to not transfer the money or if that is something she can do under her authority. So I just put in the second if, and Marianne said she'd made that was fine with her.
Fantastic. Any other edits or questions, concerns about the minutes? So let's move to a, we're all in favor of the amendment of the ifs.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, no opposition. So let's move on to the report of park officials. I have nothing to report as park board president at this time. So I know we have Scott joining us as our attorney. Any updates or you'd like to share with us, Scott?
Scott, you're muted.
All right, I know we'll hear from you, Scott, as we move on through the rest. Oh, you trying to speak?
Okay. No, I was just gonna say, it looks like staff has been working with Dirk to get things in order relative to the COVID. And if anybody has any questions during this, I'll be here to help out, I hope.
Thank you. I'm sure we will. Knowing that we have lots on our agenda, especially with the COVID crisis and the furtherance of the governor's amended executive order today, I'll turn it over to Gail so she can update.
You guys are taping it, right? Okay.
Thank you.
I worry.
Of a document here. Good evening, everybody. We are on week 6 of our COVID situation here at the district and throughout the country. I've got updates that I just want to go through, and everything that we're working on seems to be about COVID or capital or financials. So as Harmony mentioned, the governor order came out today, a new order. Everything in terms of the Perk district facilities and programs and Perk amenities, including everything in, the parks that are closed now, unfortunately, the playgrounds, et cetera, will continue to be closed through May 30th. This, I know, will continue to be a challenge for all those that love to use our parks, but we continue to ask for your cooperation and understanding for the situation, especially when the weather starts getting warmer. Just remember, and it's hard to remember, that the same rules are in place through May 30th. The governor also, order also includes face masks to be worn outdoors when you cannot social distance. And I know that the city of Perk Ridge also approved something at their meeting on Monday that I believe is coming out tomorrow and may get more specific, and that's coming from the mayor, I believe, as a city ordinance. The big question now is summer and camps, pools, and everything else about summer that we offer during this very popular time for us at the Perk District. We did not get clarification today on anything past May 30th, and his statement basically saying that he'll share more on the next phases as things progress. So as anxious as we all are, we're going to have to be patient and understand that we will be getting the information out as quickly as possible. We are currently working behind the scenes on a reopening plan. And this is right now based on the president's opening American guidelines and the CDC guidelines within phases that has been outlined in the president's order. We also understand that these will be altered based on the governor's orders, which take precedent if they're more stringent. We continue to attend webinars and consult with every single federal agency out there that we're affected by, and state agency and regulatory agencies for everything that we operate under. We expect to hear more next week from IDPH, that's the Illinois Department of Public Health, and StarGuard, who is in charge of our GUARD program and our regulations for our guards. We're expecting to hear more information next week. There is a webinar on Thursday that IEPB is sponsoring, and IDPH will be on that, and we have been told that we'll be receiving the pool, some more guidance on pools at that time. We're also consulting with American Camp Association and keeping up to date on anything they come out with, as we are accredited by the American Camp Association. And that's also an order that would come down from the governor based on group sizes for camps and other programming that we would be doing. The plan will be very fluid, and we will be sharing it with the public once we get it to a point where we are at a stage where we have a plan that's different than what we're stating now. And it will be very detailed based on each facility and each programming area within those facilities and what will be running and what will not. We can only work with the information provided at this time. Our goal continues to be to offer as much as possible this summer in our facilities and programs based on the guidelines. One of our very top priorities is programming for the children and the parents to give relief through summer programming. So we will do everything possible when it comes to summer camps, or it will be a revised version, most likely, of our summer camp program. And also we will do anything possible to get people to get into our facilities safely and within the guidelines. Some of the things that are being discussed amongst many, many things for camp could include smaller group sizes, no field trips, and things like that. Nothing, again, is set in stone at this point. But like I said, we'll be working within those phases that the president has set out for group sizes. So it could look very different, but we will do our very best. We've been spending a lot of time on ordering PPEs, including masks, gloves, thermometers, sanitizers, in anticipation for summer programming in our facilities. Staff's done a great job on looking at all the different regulations for what type of uses for, what type of mask for what staff that we have. But we will, safety is always going to be, I always say it, but safety will always be at the top of our priority list. And so we will not open a facility or run a program if we are not comfortable that we can do it in the safest manner possible. We will continue to communicate through our website and Facebook, and we will be putting out a message to the public about this phase that will be going through May, hopefully tomorrow afternoon or over the weekend or Monday. But as soon as we get information and can get how that applies to us, we'll be getting that out. We'll continue to be getting out to the public through Facebook and our website. Our summer brochure did go out, and I know that Margaret sent a message on our Facebook page. And also there was a message in there that there will be alterations. That book was being produced as this was occurring. So it was printed, and we realized that there would be need for a change. And again, we will continue to update everybody when we get that. So with that, we'll be talking about financials later in the meeting. I'd just like to continue to thank the board for your support, the staff for their hard work, and the community for being in this together with us, and for your patience as we work through this together. So I open it up to any questions on that topic.
Thanks, Gail. I know we're going to be launching into a little bit more discussion about scenario planning. Oh, any luck?
Harmony, are you muted?
No? Can you hear me now better? Any luck?
I could hear you. We could hear you.
Harmony, I'm sorry, could you repeat?
Oh, sure. So I know we're going to be talking about finances a little bit later, but as you've discussed, you're kind of modeling some scenario planning with regards to programming.
Mm-hmm.
and I know it's kind of like looking into a crystal ball because we're not only beholden to federal standards and phases like the president and his team have discussed, but really we're under the state guidelines with the governor as well. And we know that, he just provided us today with guidance for the next month. So it's very difficult, I can imagine, to plan staffing and programming when things might change within a matter of a few days.
Correct.
So do you have different levels of modeling? You're doing everything from, I'm assuming, virtual programming for the summer to small group under 10 to small group under 50 is that kind of the exercises that you're going through with your counterparts at other park districts and the National Camp Association?
Yes, that's exactly what we will be doing. We've got some great modeling from people that have already hit our stage from across the country. And so we're utilizing those as a blueprint, and we'll be going from there. And yes, that's exactly how we're modeling it for the groups of 10, groups of 50 for programming. The other thing, when we talk about financials, the other thing is that we are making sure, once we get that together, meaning, okay, we can have 10 kids in a room. Let's just use that example. And how many kids is that per building? And then let's relook at the whole budget, right? So it's going to we're going to build it, and then we're going to look at, can we afford this? And if not, do we have to possibly look at our fees, and say, if we're going to be able to offer this model that we are allowed to offer per the governor's orders, it may cost us X. Now, if we don't offer field trips, for example, in a summer camp, then, that takes away an expense. So, it's going to be a whole new look at where we are with these new parameters, if that makes sense.
It does. And it's helpful to note that you said IDTH is going to be talking to you all next week about pools and what they're recommending for the summer.
Yes, now that's true. And I believe, Scott, if you want to chime in, I know that they've said, he's saying that they've said that splash pads aren't essential. And I haven't heard I have not heard official word on that yet about splash pads and pools.
Yeah, there's two letters that I just forwarded to Gail that came out this afternoon that were sent to Chris Welch, who's a partner at my firm, who's a state rep, and he is saying both of those are not essential. The Department of Public Health is saying those are not essential at this point. I'm not sure if that's going to skew the discussion next week that they're having. Right. They also had a press conference, I understand, and Department of Public Health was very concerned with people, I guess the easiest way to say it is not showering before getting into pools and stuff, and what will happen with that, and that there could be spread of the virus that way.
Yes, and yeah, I hadn't seen those letters. I saw something come through you, but I can't figure out how to get to my email, but
okay.
That's
okay.
Two
letters that from Department of Public Health saying both of those are not essential and that they're standing on that at this point.
Yeah, so I think that there's a big push, from the professionals to talk about some ways that we could do that, have pools. But I agree. Today, the governor got asked about it, and he specifically said the doctor came up and talked about the fecal shedding in the pools, and then exactly what you're saying, Scott, the locker rooms. And so that was new information at 3:30 today. So that's, obviously I said until we get the official word, and if they're saying that now, that's the official word, but, it's not been, who knows what's going to happen later in the summer, right? So hopefully there'll be some relaxation of that. And if there's not, we follow what, the order says.
Thanks, Gail. I appreciate all the communication that you and the staff have done during this time, because there are so many unknowns. And I know that there is pent up demand and growing demand, as the crisis evolves and the seriousness of this and the peak that we're likely to experience here in Illinois continues. There still is pent up demand for folks to use our parks and to have programming. But I appreciate your discussion around safety and efficacy. I think that's most important. I also think more communication is better. I know that we have affiliates and others who use our parks for programming that are going, as this evolves, are going to want to have more and more discussion about what that looks like for them and for their use of the field potentially this summer. So from a board perspective, I just urge you to continue talking with our affiliates and the public, and kind of continuing to provide the great updates that you've provided, because I think it really just helps during this time. Even if we don't know, I appreciate you and the staff doing that. Any other questions for Gail right now about programming?
I feel that I have a question. This is Commissioner Coyne. But I think we're going to be able to talk more about specific things and how we're going to deal with this in the finance side of it, I assume, right?
Correct, yes.
All right, I'll hold off my comments until then. Thanks.
Okay, and I just wanted to throw in while I'm talking right here, but just, we have been in communication with the affiliates, and I know Terry has been talking to baseball and soccer, and they're also, I know soccer is getting their direction as well from their governing body too. I think it's AYSO or whoever the governing body is. So, they came out and canceled and communicated that to us about their house league before we even got there. So, but we will continue to do that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Gail at this time before we move on through the agenda? I know you have any general updates or the marketing and public relations agenda item next.
I do not have anything at this time, no general updates. And marketing, the marketing report is in the packet, as well as the HR report. Both those departments continue to be extremely busy, like all the rest of us, shifting, to COVID. And I know that Manager Holler has been working on a lot of the comments coming from the public and communicating back and forth with staff and I with those. And Director DeGangi is dealing with the unemployment, not directly, but helping the staff through that. And also the CARES Act and the, the other various things that affect the HR and our employees throughout this. So.
I know that you've been working with the Park Ridge Police Department and our Park Patrol, and now that we're looking at an extension of the shelter-in-place order from the governor for an additional month amidst hopefully some warmer weather. Can you share with the board an update as to how that's been going in terms of working with Park Patrol and the Police Department, and any other type of messaging that we can assist with or that you have planned for the next month, as you all think about how we can continue to share with the public that, some of the rules around do's and don'ts. I saw that there was a golfing reminder and a dog reminder that went out today.
Yes, those are two of the issues that we're dealing with the mowing. The golf balls are buried a little deeper because the grass is a little longer. And so we just appreciate the public if you can follow the rules that you're not supposed to be hitting golf balls in the open parks. And because they can cause major damage and injury if they fly up, and somebody that may be happening to be walking by closely to the mowers. And then the dogs on the leash is another very important thing. We've been hearing some concerns from residents that have their dogs on the leash, and they are concerned about dogs that are off leash. And so that is an ordinance of ours that the dogs need to be on leash in our parks. So I would just say that we've been communicating, and I have not actually heard a lot more because I know the police is, they're on their routine of people are calling the non-emergency number, and that's what we would continue to tell them to do. And we just ask for people's cooperation. I think it's just going to get to the point of when it gets warmer, it's going to be a decision, do we spend our staff time out in every single park? Because that's the only way anything would really change. And I really, if we're seeing from some things that are going across the country, it's not really where we want to go. And I don't think we want to be spending taxpayers' dollars sending our staff out in the park and then having to call the police over anyway. So we ask the public to continue to call that non-emergency number. And we've got great communication going on with the police. We appreciate everything that they're doing for, for the community and for us and the parks at this time.
If there are no other commissioner questions for Gail, we can move on to the report section of the meeting. Turn it over to Commissioner Leduc.
Okay, and I will turn it over to Superintendent DeAngelis.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
The finance report begins on page 13. So the highlights that I've included, continue to indicate that, we were on a pretty good track. Before the pandemic and stay-at-home orders hit, the March numbers, have been updated to reflect what we've actually incurred, and everything's been adjusted accordingly. So the end result there shows about a $200,000 variation from where we had projected at that point in the year. So we're starting to see the impact of the closure, and that's going to be, much more dramatic as we look at April's numbers. So I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the report by funds.
I just wanted to say thank you for, giving us these various scenarios and laying them all out, and for your continuing hard work.
I appreciate that.
Any other commissioner questions or comments?
Do we want to move on to the projections?
Sure.
Harmony
Yes.
shaking her head, yes. Okay. So I've also in the written report highlighted the changes in those projections from the last meeting. So basically, again, we've updated fund balance to match the most recent draft of the audit, which is quite nearly done. And we've updated the March numbers, and then otherwise I made a couple adjustments to capital to make things a little more realistic. But we have not really gotten into projecting out what some of these, now that it's beginning to become a little more clear, as Gail was explaining, to actually develop a reopening plan. So as that takes shape, we will be looking at the financial implications of the reopening plan and then adjusting those projections accordingly. For example, with some of the program things that we may be able to offer. But as Gail explained, we're still, kind of understanding what those will be. So I think that the next part of our task will be to really dig into what that reopening plan will look like, and then what the budgets will look like with that, and then we'll project that out in these scenarios.
Thank you. Any other commissioner questions or comments?
So
Are there, oh wait, Superintendent DeAngelis, is there, yeah, like what was,
Sorry, I did have one other thing I wanted to address that we included at the end of the finance section after the projections. There, I think one of the commissioners had a question about tax collections and what the percentages looked like during the last recession. So if you recall, I think in the first scenario, I believe we're estimating 85% collections, and the more stressed scenario, we're looking at 75% collections going forward. And I think there was a interest in comparing to how what kind of collection percentage we had during the Great Recession. So I've included from a page in the comprehensive annual financial report that shows what our collection percentage was in the first year of the tax levy, and then it shows in subsequent years when we do get some prior year tax receipts. And what we see during that time is that there was a dip. Pull the page up. It's on page 31, or I'm sorry, page 30. So what we actually see is that the lowest first year collection percentage was in 2010, and that was 96.6%, which in subsequent years we still receive collections that got us to the 98% that we use when we do the kind of lost cost factor. So I believe that in that situation, there were, the housing crisis was kind of the big driver of that recession. And many people experienced foreclosures. And when that happened, the banks were actually paying the property taxes. So I think what's different here in this scenario is that there's an eviction moratorium, I believe, for some time. It was part of one of the governor's orders, is my understanding. I'm not sure what that means as it relates to foreclosures, if people aren't able to pay, but because the nature of this situation is so unprecedented, and where it seems like there may be a likelihood of people not being able to put off making their mortgage payments and things of that nature, that it could impact our collection percentage much more than we actually saw during the Great Recession. I've also recently got some information that there may be a timing delay. So that's another thing that I need to get some more information on, and that we'll look at again as we are refining these models and getting more information and having a better idea what the financial impacts are going to be. Is that helpful? Anybody have questions?
I think I have a question. I'm going to share my webcam so you can see my
Commissioner Coyne?
I'm looking at the projections here, and I kind of skipped the fund balance projection, the moderate ones, because I think we're past that myself. And I'm looking at the projected budget fees, admissions, rental income, sales, et cetera, 35% for July, 45% for August. And I can't help but think that if that's based on whether we're going to use the pools and whether people are going to be playing, teams are going to be playing baseball, et cetera, that those are really high estimates, because I think those should be factored in at zero, because from what I can tell, I don't think the pools are going to open. And if they do open, I don't know who's going to use them, because the way I feel right now, not me, myself, but taking the temperature, so to speak, of the community, these people are telling me that they're not sending their kids to the pool. They're that they're not going to have their kids involved in team sports. They're not going to be sending their kids to camp. Now, there were some great points made about maybe changing how programming works on the campsite, so that may be part of it. But some of these more traditional things, I'm really concerned about. And then there's an expense that goes with them, hiring lifeguards and filling pools. And I know Gail said that we're in the process of we're waiting for feedback, but I think, and I'm not saying we have to revamp something now, and I appreciate how hard it must be to hit this moving target, and it keeps moving. So I'm not criticizing it anyway. I just think that our scenarios for what our revenues are should consider that there is almost no summer activity going on. That's my position. So I didn't know whether to bring that up now or in a further discussion, but I didn't want to go past without at least making that comment.
I think it's.
Go ahead, Sandra.
I think it's good feedback, and that again, as we work on this reopening plan, I think it'll kind of really much better inform what, if anything, we can expect, right?
Yeah, so yeah.
And we intend to make adjustments monthly as we have more information. But go ahead, Gail.
So I think just add on to that, and exactly what we're doing. We got this information, I think, from the president. The days are kind of running together a little bit, but yeah. I think that was the beginning of this week, or I don't know when he came out with that last Friday,
Thursday, yeah.
Thursday, Friday. And that's when we started to say, okay, now we can narrow down into, you can have groups of 50 at this stage, you can have groups of 10 at this stage. So what does that mean to everything we're doing, right? And so I think before then, the staff is all making all their assumptions and looking at all the different details of the what ifs in a lot of different ways. But we did not want to put the pen to the paper until we got those figures, because we didn't want to go back, right? So it's a big puzzle. And so we wanted to, for this next phase, because the scenarios you have in front of you take us through April and May with no revenue, right? No program or facility revenue. So now we're at the stage, as Sandra said, for this next phase. And the staff and I, the administrative team, have a meeting tomorrow to start that modeling. And so that, like we said, that'll be the next stage and everything that goes with it. In these scenarios, there's a lot of expenses that would, obviously, if we don't open the pools, those expenses go. So you'll see a whole different model, in a couple different scenarios when we're at the next stage, which I would imagine is going to be the May regular meeting, by the time we can get through it on all different levels, right?
Right. Okay, so I get that. And first of all, I think that the president, I assume you're referring to the phase 1, 2, 3 thing that he came out with at the end of the week, the administration came out with. And seems like I've read part of it. I think it seems like a good way to start to get reopened. And however, it's also in the hands of our governor as to when or if he follows those guidelines. There's no indication that he won't follow those guidelines, but he's not going to follow them tomorrow. He's not following them until June, at least until June, because that's what he said, May 30, right? I think that's what he said today, May 31st. So, but that leads me to the other side, is the expense side. So if we have no revenue coming in from fees, we still have other revenue coming in, of course. Doesn't that impact capital projects and other things that that we had already budgeted for, that we're going to now maybe not be able to do, or maybe we should be pushing that down the road a little bit, because we're going to be cutting into reserve funds and other things in order to pay for whatever program we can try to deliver towards the end of the summer. So that's what I'm also concerned. And of course, I don't know, I'm not an expert on where all the pools of money are that we're taking and pulling and putting to use for different things, but we're already working on, like, preparing the baseball fields to some degree to play. We're already working on trying to get the pools ready to open. Those are expenses that we're incurring now that maybe now, I don't mean today, but I mean in short order, and maybe the first May meeting is fine, is that we say, well, it's time to, no pun intended, pull the plug on the pools, and we're just not going to do that. I don't know. I just get concerned that I think our revenue estimates for, even in the worst case scenario, are overstated, based on what I'm hearing in the community, and based on the fact that the governor has pushed us back until June 1st before really anything can start to happen. I'll
Right.
shut up now.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're exactly right in everything you're saying, right? In terms of your concern, we share it. And we did not get a phase 1, 2, and 3. Some states, I'll use Wisconsin as an example. I read theirs thoroughly last week, because after the president's orders came out, and they came out with theirs, it was very detailed on the governor's order from Wisconsin. And our governor is choosing to handle it a different way. Not criticizing, it's just the way he's doing it. But we did not receive that detail today for our operations. We received a letter, just as Scott said, since I've even known about what they're saying is essential and not, in terms of the pools. They talked about golf courses, which we don't have one, and so they have not given the kind of detail. Our governor did not give yet, and I know they're working on it, the type of detail for us to dig in and know what he's going to come up with, so we can make assumptions. And our assumptions have to be on the information that's in front of us, which is the federal right now, and understand that when he comes out with his at these 2 different phases, it sounded to me like he's going to wait, okay, when we get there, then we'll tell you what the next phase is going to look like. Now, hopefully that will change a little bit, because that's very hard for anybody to deal with, right? And we're talking a little over a month where our camps start. So we are going to do some modeling, and down to the rooms that we would be using, the numbers in each of those rooms, the number of staff, how the logistics would work with who's allowed in the buildings. We're going to base that now, because, we've got to go with the federal guidelines right now. And so when we gave you these projections last month, we did not have that information. So those will change downward, I'm assuming, for sure. And then the expenses will also go down. So that's the maybe silver lining in a little bit of this, that those expenses will go down along with that. So we don't know until we know that the pools are not going to open, 100%, if that order will change, and I think we'll know, we've got the direction today, and now we'll know next week, is that standing, right? Or are they going to think about changing that later in the summer? And is that even logical, right? To think that we would open a pool in August, right? I don't think so. I think we need to open it by July, if we're going to do anything. But so that takes out, that's a whole different scenario that takes out those specific expenses. So without knowing that, we're not going to just go randomly pull some different expenses, right? So I hear what you're saying, and we share that concern, and we will be working towards that.
Yeah, and I would just add that we included these two scenarios, but it's not because we think this is what's going to happen, right? We tried to put together a framework that we could use to see how we expect things to look once we have more information. I separated out the capital fund so that we could have a better way to look at what our fund balance operating would look like versus capital under certain scenarios. But I think we're going to talk later in the meeting about the recommendations for capital projects. But I think it's great feedback, and we're all concerned for sure. Yeah.
Sure. And I'll just close my comments here with a thank you to you all. Again, the moving target thing, it's got to be just unbelievably hard, especially, well, numbers kind of baffle me anyway. So you trying to work out these budgets and trying to figure out revenues and expenses in worst case or moderate case scenarios, it amazes me that you can come up with anything because I would never be able to do that. So I appreciate how hard you guys are working on this. So thank you very much. And yeah, there'll be other comments about capital projects, and we'll talk about that later.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to Sandra, of course, and her team. And I think it's also our desire to really hold on until we get that final order, because we want to offer these services to the community if at all possible. But the last thing, I'll reiterate it again, we've always been about safety first, and we will not sacrifice the safety, in terms of, we're going to follow the guidelines, of course. So you can be assured of that.
Thank you. So are we ready then for the motions?
It sounded like Cindy had a comment.
Oh,
I can't
sorry, Cindy.
hear her. I think you're muted.
I can't hear you, Cindy.
Actually, you are not muted, but it must be something with your microphone on your end.
Cindy, if you open up the side tab, the arrow to the right hand side, it gives you, there's an audio option. Maybe if you click on that. I had to click through that to select my microphone earlier.
Can you type in the chat box? I'm seeing Cindy says it's too complicated, that we should move on. Sorry about that.
Sorry, Cindy. All right. Do any other commissioners have any other comments about the modeling before I move on to the motions? All right. In that case, I move to approve for payment vouchers in the total amount of $554,920.12. This action will be formally ratified at an actual board meeting with physical presence at a later date. Superintendent DeAngelis, any comments? I mean,
I don't have any comments, but
any commissioner?
other than thanking the finance team for keeping accounts payable running remotely. They've been doing a great job of trying to track down invoices and make sure people are getting, the approvals and keeping our processes in place. So I want to throw a shout out to the team for their hard work on it.
Did someone second the motion?
Oh, yeah. I don't know that anybody did.
Sorry.
Can
This is
someone
Commissioner Tunnell. I'll second.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioner comments or questions? All right, seeing none, could you call the vote?
Sure. Commissioner Coyne,
Yes.
Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington.
Yes.
All right, so that passes. So next up, I move to concur in the determination and recommendation of staff that a transfer from the unassigned general fund to capital is not needed nor recommended and shall not be made for fiscal year 2019. This action will be formally ratified at an actual board meeting with a physical presence at a later date. Superintendent DeAngelis, this was what I had asked about last time, right?
Correct. This is the follow-up to your
I'll-
question about the fund balance transfer.
I'll second that. I'll second that.
Sorry.
Thank you, Cindy. All right, any commissioner comments or questions? Seeing none, can you call the vote?
Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrington.
Yes.
Thank
All
you.
right, that passes. So now my final motion, I move to adopt resolution number 20-3, a resolution authorizing benefit protection leave service for COVID-19 related furlough time. This action will be formally ratified at an actual board meeting with physical presence at a later date. Do I have a second?
Commissioner O'Donnell, second.
Thank you. All right, Superintendent DeAngelis, any comments?
Yes. Staff is recommending the board adopt the resolution that is on page 31 of the packet, which will allow the district's valued employees who are furloughed and IMRF participants to maintain their IMRF benefits during their unpaid leave. A benefit protection leave is an employer option that allows an IMRF member to receive IMRF service credit and protect their disability and death benefits during an approved unpaid leave of absence. And that's up to a maximum of 12 months only. The leave period and employer costs must be approved by the employer's governing body. And if leave is approved, the IMRF member is responsible for paying the member portion of the cost. And the district's contributions will be paid through future employer contribution rates. So we've estimated the monthly costs to the district for currently furloughed employees based on current contribution rates. So if we were paying this ongoing, it'd be approximately $11,300, but that amount would be owed in the future through our future contribution rates. And that is if all of the currently furloughed IMRF participant employees were to apply for this leave. So if the resolution is adopted by the board, furloughed employees who wish to utilize the benefit protection leave will fill out IMRF's form that's included as an exhibit to the resolution. They'd return it to me for processing. And then I also wanted to highlight that each form would require certification by the board secretaries. So John Tunnell, we would need to coordinate signatures all around in order to provide this to these employees. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Did I read it correctly that there was a 12-month provision there, but is it also it's 12 months over the life of the employee's employment? Is that correct? So for some reason they used it all up and this happened again 10 years from now and they already used it, they couldn't use it again. Is that correct?
I need to double check that. Let's
I thought
see.
I saw that, but I'm not sure.
That's probably right, but
I'm seeing that on page 31.
yeah.
Yeah, that's in the resolution.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments or questions? All right, seeing none, if you could call the vote.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne,
Aye.
Commissioner Grau, Commissioner Harrington,
Yes.
and Commissioner Grau. Okay, no response.
All right, well, that passes. And so with that, I'd like to hand it over to Commissioner O'Donnell for recreation.
And I yield the floor to Superintendent Armour.
Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear
I
me?
can hear you.
We
I can hear you.
We
April.
can't
Yeah,
see you.
we can't
Yeah,
see you. but we can hear you.
My webcam is not sharing. I'm not sure why. So I think I'll just speak if that's okay. My board report begins on page 36. That was pretty, oh, here we go. Thanks, Margaret. Yeah, of course, similar to a lot of the other reports, it was a little difficult and inconsistent to put this together based on past years due to closing mid-month. So, definitely hard to give some comparisons, but there were still some great things happening early on in the month with the daddy-daughter dance. And, we were seeing some increase and definitely throughout some of our program areas. That was pretty exciting at the time. Staff is working from home. Gail mentioned a lot of the things that they're working on through the different scenarios and the stages potentially to open facilities and programs back up, and also keeping the community engaged through some of the online offerings and videos and messages and the play in place. And just to prepare for all scenarios, we are continuing with virtual interviews. There's been some virtual job fairs just last week and also just through phone calls and video chats. So trying to keep the community engaged and planning for all of the different scenarios that might be ahead of us. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have questions for Superintendent Armour? Well, hearing none, do you have anything else, Superintendent Armour?
I do not. Very brief this evening. Thank you.
Okay, then we will move on, and I yield the floor to Commissioner Leach.
Thank you. I will yield the floor to Superintendent Wolf.
Thank you. My report does begin on page 43 of the board packet. As you can see, we've been moving forward with a number of projects that we've previously reported on. If anyone has any questions about any of those projects specifically, I'd be happy to answer them.
Terry, it's Commissioner Harrington.
Hello.
I just had a question. Some of the projects look really good. Thanks for including the photos since we don't get out and about as much as we used to see these works in progress.
Sure.
I had a question about the damage report to the Hinckley tennis court.
Yes.
I didn't see any amounts associated with that. It was disheartening to see. Wasn't sure what the extent of the damage was.
So it's unknown at this point. We're going to have to get a contractor out to take a look at it. It looks like someone had taken one of the chains that we use to lock up the gates and used it to beat on the surface of the tennis court a little bit. And so it had some damage to the painted surface of the tennis courts at Hinckley. So I just don't have a good estimate right now, and it's not the easiest time to get contractors out to give estimates. So I'll follow up with the board at a later date.
Thanks for letting us know.
It's not a really large area. It's a relatively small 4 foot by 8 foot area, if that helps, I guess.
Thanks. Hi, this is Commissioner Grau. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I have two questions. One was, I didn't see anything about the graffiti at the skate park. Was that real?
I don't recall having any new graffiti at the skate park. We had some on the last report.
No, it wasn't on the last report either. So that's why I was looking for it on this report.
We have not had a significant graffiti at the skate park that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe you can check to see what it was, because it wasn't on the last report. I was the one who let you know somebody complained about that. And then I was kind of sad to see the forest preserve tree inventory. Is that feedback from me, or is somebody from you? I don't know. Okay. If 85 to 90% of the trees over the forest preserve are buckthorn, is the Cook County Forest Preserve thinking we would take those out, all those out? And what would be left?
Yeah, I don't know that they're thinking that we would take those out necessarily. And we have not had a furtherance of the discussion about that since the report was completed. But initially, my understanding was that the type of tree just had a determination on the value of the tree and what we would have to pay for any tree that was removed. They had a much lower value for buckthorn, and we are aware that other communities that have worked out in similar situations with the county have perhaps gotten those fees waived when they were things like buckthorn that are considered invasive species. So we did not have any understanding that we'd be required to remove all of them. We were just happy to find that there was a reasonable path. We shouldn't have much trouble finding a pathway through there and not harming, any populations of desirable trees. So, but we haven't had a furtherance of that conversation. So, but those are what my expectations are at this time.
Well, unfortunately, the desirable trees are on our side. At some point when the dust settles, I'd be interested in talking to you about this. I know it's not a priority, but I was sad to see that number.
Yeah, it's a high number. I was shocked how high the number was in there.
Well, I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk with you once we get moving on with that.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion for Superintendent Wolf?
Yes, just to refresh my memory, in the Centennial Fitness Center, you've got the note here about the HVAC. Is that the thing that was in the floor? And there was a leak, or was an unbudgeted expense, but we're using some other money? Is that it?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Wolf. Any other questions for Superintendent Wolf? All right. Hearing none, I do have a few motions to ask for approvals on. The first one is I move to approve the lowest responsible bidder, Klaus Brothers Incorporated, for the main park picnic shelter and fireplace installation project in the base bid amount of $155,090, and to authorize the executive director to execute and deliver the agreement. This action will be formally ratified at an actual board meeting with physical presence at a later date. Do I have a second?
second, Commissioner Harrington.
Thank you, Commissioner Harrington. We have a second. I'm going to turn it back over to Superintendent Wolf with any description or detail before we open it up to full discussion with the board.
Thank you. Moving on page 46 of the board packet, I have a memo that describes this project. The bid did come in significantly over budget. And in the, sorry, I'm having feedback issues with my, I have bad feedback issues. In the second page of the board packet, you can see I've outlined the budget for this project and some of the already approved items, some of the money that we've spent, and some of the anticipated expenses that we have coming up. In addition, I've outlined in the budgeted area a number of other projects that are part of the list of projects identified in yellow later out of the packet that we are recommending to postpone those projects and to repurpose those funds to complete this project. As a reminder, this project was part of the museum grant. And as a big portion of the museum grant, we have to have this shelter installed. The shelter has been purchased through a joint purchasing agreement and is being delivered this May. So this is for the installation of that shelter and the fireplace. So unfortunately, as high as this is over budget and during these times, we do think it's the best recommendation for us to move forward with the installation. Or we will have a large shelter that we'll have to store and we will not have the ability to install.
Thank you. Opening now for commissioners or others that would like to speak or discuss this topic.
Okay, so yeah, this is Commissioner Klein. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
So again, I'm not so good with math, but isn't it like not just a little bit over budget, like double over budget?
Yeah, it was like $86,000 over budget.
No, I'm not gonna take up time here trying to figure out how we were so wrong.
I of course have a good explanation for that.
Barry, can I interrupt real quick? I'm sorry. Whoever's got their phone on speakerphone, would you mind taking it off? Thank you.
So based on, keeping in mind my previous comments, so you understand where I'm coming from on this whole thing, I'm really concerned that we're paying $155,000 for anything right now, much less whatever it is, $40,000, whatever it is, $86,000 more than what we anticipated paying, and taking out other things that we had budgeted for, which obviously we at one point or another thought we needed. So in all, because we don't want to have to store the shelter for that period of time. So I guess my question is, how much is it going to cost us to store the shelter until we can figure out that we have enough money to pay for the rest of the project?
Well, I'm not sure. I have not looked into that, but it's also, we would be forfeiting the $225,000 we'd be getting from the museum grant. Because this was a key component of that grant, and so in order for us to be able to complete that grant project and get those funds that we have planned in our capital, we have to complete this work.
Okay, so I'll have to retract my previous comment that I don't have to hear an explanation as to why we're that much over. So Terry, why don't you just tell us why we're this much over budget? Because if we're between a rock and a hard place then, and I really need to know when I'm going to be asked by people why we're spending this much money when
Sure.
when we don't have any revenue, when we're having half of our revenue is not coming in.
Sure,
So
I understand. And trust me, I am very cautious about any of our capital spending right now. I take that very much to heart and understand your concerns. So for this project in particular, we had a couple challenges. For one, when we applied for this project, it was 2014. The budgets, all the projects we were awarded the grant, but before the work was completed, the grants were put on hold. Just a few years ago, 2 years ago, about a year and a half ago, we were told that we would receive the grant money funding, but they didn't increase it or inflate it for the several years that had passed. And so we've been working hard to try to fit this project into that budget that we had originally. With that, we've taken a lot of steps to do what we can to make sure that the different things and aspects of the project would fit within the budget. In fact, one of the steps that we took that we felt most comfortable and confident with was that we had reached out specifically to a contractor that would be interested in this type of work and asked him for his opinion on the probable cost of construction, just to test our plans and against our budget. His opinion of this was that we were right on track and that we should have no problem effectively installing this project as we had planned. So we moved forward with the bid. That contractor was very interested in the project and had intended on placing a bid, but he never did follow through with a bid. So when the bids came in as high as they did, it obviously caused us to start to reach back and talk to, try to get a hold of and talk to the contractor, as well as talk to the contractor that did put in the low bid. And there was a lot of other things that we believe the contractor that had given his opinion of the probable cost didn't consider that are part of the project. So things like site access and tree protection and just a various number of other things. We were concerned that maybe there was, something at this stage because of the, concerns over COVID and the status of just the economy in general, that had a large impact on the cost of this bid. And so I took a further step to reach out to our construction manager that we used on both Prospect Park and the Centennial Pool construction projects. And we talked through the project. Even though he wasn't part of it, he was willing to lend his expertise. And after going through some discussions with that and talking through some of the finer points, we realized that the project, the bids that came in were in fact in line with what this project should have cost, and that we felt very confident that that other contractor who had gave his opinion had missed on a few things. And so it was just very unfortunate that our method for checking just didn't work out for us this time. It's not often, and it's definitely disheartening because we were past the point of making any significant changes because we've already purchased the shelter. So.
I'll just add into that, if I could, that we echo your concern, and we're going to talk about capital projects next. The other ones, we have been focusing on the ones that have been in progress, and this is one, that we felt pretty confident we were going to be starting in May, and so this is a big surprise to us. But I would encourage the board, really recommending that we move this project through because of the factors that Terry stated. And, even though it's over, we've cut some other things in the budget. We know we need to cut or delay postpone other projects, but we're in a bad position because of the grant. And we would be foregoing that $225,000. So I'm strongly encouraging the board to please consider this request.
This is Commissioner Rao. I have to say I was very surprised by this, and one of the reasons I was surprised is because the 5 years I've been on the board, I haven't seen anything like this. I believe there were some parking lot issues before I got on the board, but it's not normal. I do remember that these grants were pushed off, and so and it's probably Mike Rink you were talking to about, and he has worked with us for many years. So I feel more comfortable agreeing to this because I haven't seen this. It's an anomaly, and I do remember the sequence of events as you described.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
This is Commissioner Tunnell. I had a quick question. Does this, do we lose the grant if the money's not spent in 2020, or can it be delayed to 2021 by any chance, or no?
The project has to be completed and billed out and paid by June of 2021. And it would be very challenging for us to push this off to next year and get everything completed and meet a 2021 June deadline.
I think the other issue
Thank
is
you.
that we asked all these questions and follow up on that bid. And if we thought the bid was that off, that we would go out, that was one of the things we discussed, is rebidding this project. But we've been told by the experts that no, it was a guy that we were relying on that did not bid the project, that thought he could do it for that amount, and that we would not see anything different. We did get 4 bids, that would show that it's within the range for this type of a project. So I don't think we would see anything different if we did delay. We might see an increase, right, because of inflation at that point. So we're not happy with it either.
I was just asking about the capital outlay there versus, timing wise, like if we have a 6-month, 7-month delay, cash flow looks a little better in 6 months. That's the only thought process I was asking about. So I appreciate the info. Thank you.
Sure, and I'll channel Sandra for a second and just say that capital fund dollars can't be spent on operations; they have to be spent on capital. So she could chime in and correct me if I'm saying something wrong, but.
I do believe that we were looking for that project to, is what we were expecting to use bond proceeds for. So I would agree with that.
Other questions or comments for Superintendent Wolf? Mary Ann, could you please call for a roll call vote?
Sure. Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne,
No.
Commissioner Grau,
Yeah.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington.
Yes.
Thank you. For the next motion, I move to approve change order number 1 with Verde Energy Efficiency Experts in the credit amount of $20,959.02 to cover the cost of purchasing the light fixtures, which will now be completed through a direct purchase by the Park District. This action will be formally ratified at an actual board meeting with physical presence at a later date. Do I have a second?
Second, Commissioner Leduc.
Thank you, Commissioner Leduc. I will turn it over to Superintendent Wolf first for any description on this item. Superintendent?
Thank you. This project was approved prior to the shutdown, bid and approved prior to the shutdown. Because of the timing of the procurement of the lights, the contractor has run into a change in policy with the manufacturer of this lighting, which is NAFCO. So in order to help this project move along, we've determined that the best course of action would be to complete a change order to remove the purchase of the lights from the contract with Verde. And instead, we've created an agreement and opened up an account with the manufacturer of the lights to purchase the lighting directly from them. So this has no effect on the cost overall of the project. It just changes how this is being delivered. I did talk this through with Attorney Price, and he concurred with taking this action, agreed that it was a favorable way to go forward. So.
Superintendent Wolf, this is Commissioner Harrington. Because we are purchasing now direct from manufacturer, the price doesn't change. There's no discount, that there's not a vendor involved, or they're just honoring the vendor price. I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, I had asked in discussion with Verde and, suggested that, of course, if they had any markup on their, on the cost of the lighting, that we should see a discount based on that markup, that we should not be paying a markup for something they're not doing, let alone this has caused me some time and legwork on the project overall. And so there is, I think in the long run, there is like maybe a $200 difference, but it's very negligible, if any. So Verde insisted that they did not mark up this product, and they were just billing us for the labor and purchasing this directly. So we do have to have another part of the project included doing a structural evaluation of the existing poles to make sure that they had the structural integrity for these new lights. And while they do, the lights are going to be mounted a foot below the top of the poles, so an additional bracket has to be created now based on the structural integrity. So that's kind of washing itself out in the overall project. So, which would have happened one way or the other, because we required in the bid that they test for the structural integrity. So.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments for Superintendent Wolf on the motion at hand? Hearing none. Mary Ann, could you please call for a roll call vote?
Sure. Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne,
Aye.
Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington.
Yes.
Thank you. And for my final motion, I move to approve the district's membership as an end user in the Keystone Purchasing Network, a national purchasing cooperative program. This action will be formally ratified at an actual board meeting with physical presence at a later date. Do I have a second?
Second, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you. Before I open it up to discussion with the board, if Superintendent Wolf could give us a description of this one as well, please.
Sure, this one's easy. It has no cost. I'm not asking to purchase anything. I'm just asking that we join a joint purchasing cooperative. This one is similar to what we did a month or so back for the shelter purchase. This one is intended that we will use it for the restroom shelter that we would be purchasing in conjunction with the OSLAD grant at Woodland. After working with the manufacturer and asking again if they had different cooperatives, this one in particular offered the highest discount. I believe it was a 9% discount if we're able to purchase through this. So I'm just asking for authorization to join this group, create a membership so that when the time comes, I can produce a agreement that's 9% lower, and that will have to come to the board for approval at that time.
Thank you.
Commissioner Grau. This is Commissioner Grau. I remember reading somewhere in the packet that Woodland, the money might be on hold, or what did I read?
What you read was that, IDNR, yeah, the OSLAD grant, we have the letter stating that we've been awarded the grant. The next step of the process is a couple of different pieces of paper that pass back and forth, which ultimately ends up with a signed agreement. That signed agreement didn't get into our possession before everything shut down. And while Jennifer Meunier has gotten in contact with someone at IDNR, we were informed that they were all at home and didn't have access to process any of that paperwork at this time. So it was just a matter of when they could get back up and working, and there's been no discussion about how that was going to move forward. So we understand that to be the case with many, if not all, the other districts that were awarded OSLAD.
Okay,
So,
but if we back up if we back up to the last motion, we had an agreement also that we were going to get money for that project, and we didn't get it for 5 years or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Can this wait? Can this wait until we get, or until we know that we're getting the money?
Yeah, and the purchase will. And in fact, the project, we will not be pushing this project out to bid or anything else until we know that we have that agreement in place. I'm just asking for membership in this purchasing group so that when it comes time, we're in a better position. It also allows me to potentially purchase other things that we have through this purchasing group and have other savings. So that's why this isn't attached to a purchase per se.
Well, it doesn't cost money to join?
Nope. No, it's really the Keystone group. And so the way that we're able to do this is because the Keystone Purchasing Network is actually a government agency. It's formed out in Pennsylvania. And so this is really just an agreement to do a government intergovernmental agreement with an agency out in Pennsylvania. So other states have created agencies just for the purpose of purchasing.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions or discussion points on the motion? Hearing none. Marianne, could you call the roll call vote?
Sure. Commissioner Tunnel,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne,
Aye.
Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington.
Yes.
Thank you. I have 2 more items on the building and grounds report. I'd like to turn it over to Superintendent Wolf to start us off on and/or Executive Director of Mountcastle on the Hinkley Park Master Plan update. Whoever would like to start, that'd be welcome.
I'll take this one. Gail can chime in anytime she'd like. As we talked about at the past board meeting, was we were at a point of having some discussions with our stakeholders as we've been going through and doing some preliminary planning on this project. Some of the budget estimates are trending upwards, and just because of the timing of where we're at in this project and all the uncertainty and the work that needs to be done on this project overall, just with stakeholder input and making some changes to the project overall and planning, as well as the timing that we see or we anticipate for any potential OSLAD grants that we were targeting with this project. We're just not sure that there's no certainty with any of that. And so we think for right now, we're just going to pause this project. And once we get up and going and we know a little bit more, we'll pick this project up and probably start with a discussion with the board about how we want to proceed. So I just wanted to update the board on that and give you the opportunity to provide me feedback.
Open up to the board or any other comments?
This is
Community
Commissioner
Garden.
Tunnell. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Wolf, thank you for, your research into this and reaching out to them. I think it's definitely the right call and support your guys' decision. As tough as it is for the affiliates and, changes have to happen on the fly. So I definitely support this decision. Appreciate your leadership on this one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Hearing none. Superintendent Wolf, could you also lead us in a discussion relative to 2020 capital improvements?
Sure, and I'll let Gail jump in anytime she would like. Hang on. I've learned that I need new headset for this because it's not working well for me. So we did go over a capital list at our last meeting. We had highlighted a number of capital projects, and we had made some changes to this. Specifically, one that we have added onto this list is the indoor pool renovations at $280,000, and that we're recommending at this time to postpone it. It's something that I had some additional discussion with the staff responsible for the indoor pool, as well as the fitness center staff, including Superintendent Armour. And we just feel that at this time, again, with all the uncertainty and the large dollar is involved with that, that this is something that certainly can wait until a later date to re-examine. The project itself and what we were looking to achieve, I think, is still a very viable and appropriate, especially in light of COVID-19, because we were looking at adding in UV, and UVC would effectively kill any virus that it comes in contact. So that would be great for the water quality overall. But we just don't see this as something that we should be going after right now. We think we need to take some time to understand what the new business is going to look like as things unfold. So.
I think also in light of what we discussed about Hinckley, that number is not highlighted, but that's something we have spent some money on planning and design, but not a substantial amount. So we'll adjust that dollar amount and highlight that. But we're suggesting at this point, all of these in yellow are postponed until further notice. And that dollar amount added up, Terry, we're gonna get that total.
Yep, I did, and I left it on my desk today before I left the office. So I was scrambling to try to re-add it, and I haven't been able to during the meeting. So I apologize.
Okay, so maybe we'll come back to
follow
that.
up with the board. Yeah.
Okay. So we are, we're not taking any action, I guess is my point, on all of the projects highlighted in yellow, in addition to the Hinckley project that we talked about tonight. And then the other ones are all in progress for the most part, I believe. And, we're not saying, as was mentioned, and Sandra can maybe chime in on like the exact amounts, but we have to spend our bond money on capital projects. So we are suggesting postponing these. And if it comes to it, most likely we won't have time anyway once we say, okay, we think we're okay. I'm not imagining that's going to happen. But what this would mean is we would not take any action on these projects until we came back to the board and asked you if we can go ahead with any of these, even the ones that are under the spending limit, my spending limit of $25,000.
I'm going to add it up again, but I just ran it through my calculator and got $1.2 million.
Okay. Good. You're fast.
Very fast. Impressive. Can you
I'm going to do it again just to make sure it's right. I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Well, I just before you do that, Commissioner O'Donnell, I want to caution that some of the items where it says postpone remaining, that's not true of the entire dollar amount there, and those are the numbers that I kind of had to go to my background spreadsheets to find. So you can't add those total dollar amounts. I have to work those in. So, but sorry, go ahead.
I'll add the numbers again, and I'll just leave those out. We'll see what that looks like. So just hang on.
Superintendent DeAngelis, can you remind us about the bond dollars and kind of think through that as we look at the total dollar amount we could put on pause for right now?
Sure. So we recently issued about 1.5 million, and we have previously issued, I think our last, so the majority of the fund balance in the capital fund comes from bond proceeds, and then it's supplemented by our annual transfers from operations. And as we talked about earlier in the meeting, we didn't transfer anything in 2019 to give us greater operational flexibility, but to the extent we have bond proceeds, those have to be spent on capital projects. So
but there's no requirement like this year. It's just ultimately those dollars need to be
correct.
spent.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. absolutely. There's some, tax arbitrage issues if you don't spend it within 3 years, but with rates now down to 0 again, I don't think we need to be concerned about that. So, but 3 years is typically by when we would expect to have spent the proceeds. So in general, as things play out, we would have to look into whether it makes sense to, somebody wants to join the meeting, sorry. Whether it would be worthwhile to make a calculation for sending some previously transferred operating funds back to the board, and we'd have to work with legal and the board on that if that's desired or feasible. But for the most part, the capital fund is designed for capital projects, and to the extent it's funded by bond proceeds, the bond proceeds have to be spent on capital.
I got 594. 594,000 without the in-process amounts at all. So just FYI.
Can't hear
So
Terry.
Gail, were you looking for
I had more than
consensus
that,
from the board?
Yeah, that would be nice. I think a consensus would be good. And I think Terry had a couple numbers to add from the ones, just so we can complete that, just so you know what you're getting, giving us a consensus on the postponed remaining amounts. Terry, do you have a good estimate on those?
Yeah, actually, my number that I have with the ads, and then I actually deducted some of the ones that I identified because of the previous memo where I recommended some monies that we were going to use. So I came up with a total of 908,000.
And does that include the Hinckley?
That does not include Hinckley.
Okay, so
I would say Hinckley's probably another 100,000 that we wouldn't spend.
So we're looking at about a
About
million
in savings or deferment.
$1 million in deferment. We're comfortable with it. Maybe give or take, it sounds like we might have a little bit more depending on where we are with the spending on that 150 for the Hinckley project, right?
Yes.
So what Terry also did, just so you understand, is the savings that we listed to make up that difference for the shelter installation. He also took those out. If Commissioner O'Donnell, if you're trying to figure out the numbers here. So yes, it would be great to get a consensus to make sure that we're, the board is on the same page with us with this topic.
I'm still a little unclear as to the impact of what we do with the money that's saved. Do we just pay off the bonds and forego, or you say we can't transfer it back to capital? So what do we do with it?
I think a big concern is, the uncertainty going forward,
Right.
and not having additional funds from operations, so that we may need to, kind of reevaluate, what's available going forward as we go through the budget process, as we always do. So again, it kind of would help us to review those priorities again. Terry.
So one of the things that we talked about in going through this, while we can't transfer these monies back and we have to spend the bond proceeds, we do have a number of items that are, maintenance and repair of, existing things that really can't be deferred much because of their current conditions. For example, this year we're working on the admission building for the South Park pool. It's not a large dollar amount, but it's literally falling apart. It almost doesn't function. So, we're making those repairs. And so it's the idea that we're going to continue to work on those things that are just the most important and prioritize those as we look over the next couple of years. Maybe some things bump up, maybe others fall back. But that, just what Sandra was talking about, was that it might be that budget years we don't have the ability to budget for and plan for operational surplus transfers to fund our capital, which is how we've identified that we're going to fund portions of that going forward. So if we don't have certainty on those transfers in future years, we feel like it's important for us to make those savings now where we can, and to continue to be diligent on that going forward.
This is Commissioner Grau. I don't remember if we talked about this. Is the postponement hard and fast? Like, I think I do remember, Gail, you said you would bring them back, any one of these back if we went forward with it, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So, I mean, we're just, it's more of, here's what we can stop at this point, and at any point, a commissioner can, take this list and we can continue to put it in the packet and say, you know what, I do want to go ahead with this, and that would just be a vote, right? At that point. Now, there may be some timing issues of getting these things done, or, depending on how long this goes on, about getting product, and, depending on the other industries, this is a snowball effect. But yes, correct. These can come back at any time. It's just putting a pause on it at this point.
Okay. The only one I had a question about was the pond removal. Do we lose ground by not going forward with that? Or was that the second pond we were moving over to?
We had just a little bit left in the last pond, and then we were moving over to the next one. So we're moving forward actually with replacing some of the aerators, which I had actually put on there previously, and then had a chance to follow up with staff and found out that we'd actually purchased those aerators and they're ready to get put in. So I feel pretty comfortable that we could postpone that dredging because we've almost nearly completed that in our primary pond and the west pond. And so we're just deferring till a future date till we start maybe the second pond. I think we've made such great progress on the west pond that with the new aerators that we'll be okay there.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Superintendent Wolf?
Yeah. This is Commissioner Grau, and it's a little out of order, but we're still in Superintendent Wolf's area. There was a comment I reposted online. Your request for help on the fields with the golf balls and the dogs, and somebody commented on my post that they wanted to pass on good work on the fields. They were very complimentary, and I said I would pass that on during the meeting. So
thank you. I'll pass that along to our maintenance staff. We had a lot of people taking on different roles right now, cutting grass. That we're going to make sure that the parks are clean and safe right now for everybody.
Can I just add something onto that on the parks? Something that Commissioner Coyne brought up earlier about the pools. The pool work that has been done to date, and Superintendent Wolf can correct me if I'm wrong, has been the locker room, and that was the capital project. We have not started the work to summer to get the pools ready for operations yet. So that is not going to be occurring until we get clarification. And like I said, we certainly got a pretty clear message from the letters that Scott was able to provide for us tonight. But until we hear by the end of next week, we will not be starting any of that seasonal turning the pools over. So you can be assured of that. And that's kind of how we've been dealing with this, the work, if there's work to be done and what has to be done and what is essential. We're trying to pay very close attention to that. And I give Terry and his limited crew a lot of credit for that as well.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll we've been primary focus, as Gail said, on just capital and very preliminary stuff with the pool. So we're keeping a close eye on that and been in close communication with Gail and April and Ethan on all that.
Before I turn it back over to Commissioner Grau for policy, the way I'd finish it, and I'd like to add my comments here, I think you did an outstanding job of trying to look at the projects, very logical, very sensible approach of where we can stop and postpone and pause until we see what the new normal is. I compliment you and the staff. I know it's going to take time and there's going to be other iterations, but I think it's a very prudent approach from what I can see thus far. So thank you all. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Commissioner Grau for policy.
Well, that'll be short. I have nothing to report. Intergovernmental, Commissioner Coyne.
I don't really have anything to report. I just want to, since we're right at the end of Terry's, I do appreciate I want to echo Commissioner Leach's comments on taking this approach of pausing some of these projects. I think it's really important. I think it's important not only so that we have some money available in case some sort of emergency thing comes along, that repair, I assume a repair is a capital expenditure. So, you know, if all of a sudden a roof blows off of a building or something like that and we have to do some expense, we have those funds available, but also so that we can more accurately assess what our tax revenue, what our revenues are going to be in 2021, so that we know what we're going to do regarding any kind of levy or that sort of thing. And the more that we can save, the better off we're going to look next year, I think. So that's all I had. And I have been in casual conversations with people from all the different government entities, just to kind of get a feel for what they're doing. And they're doing largely the same things that you guys are doing in terms of capital projects, trying to hold them back. So it's good to see the whole town trying to do that, because I think it's important.
I just had one more comment on intergovernmental. I know I mentioned the joint meeting that I had attended, and there has not been another one. So I will continue to let you know about that, Commissioner Coyne. And that was the one with, you know, all the people from the main township areas. But, you know, it's really, you know, you've got to look at some good out of what's come out of this. The communication between the governmental bodies in our area and throughout the state have been remarkable, and everybody's really pulling together, and it makes a huge difference in a scenario like that. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Thanks, Gail. To that end, I know that we had sent a communication out to the Oakton Task Force, sharing the board and staff recommendation that project planning be placed on hold given the COVID crisis. So I didn't notice anything on the website, though. Is there any way, do we have it on there when we discuss the Oakton project, that we have pressed pause on master planning at this time?
I will have to check with Margaret, who's sitting right here.
Maybe we could, if we haven't done that. I know there was some social media requests as to what various city agencies were doing, and I had shared the board and staff recommendation and pause of the project, but I just thought it might be nice to update our website as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks. Any other communications or correspondence?
Mm-hmm.
Any other new business from any of the commissioners?
This is Commissioner Coyne. I guess I'll try to flip on my camera here too. Anyway, you can hear me, right? There we go. So regarding the Oakton project, I don't know if this is new business or not, or maybe I should have asked to have it put on the agenda, but I think it's about time we had a serious conversation about whether or not we're going to proceed with even putting it on the referendum. The task force is on hold, but I don't think we've had a discussion about whether it's going to be on a referendum in November, April, or frankly ever. Well, not ever, but I don't know if we want to have that discussion tonight, because maybe we should be an agenda item and a vote, but I would think that that should come up sooner than later, right?
I think that by what our discussion was last time, and I guess we didn't say specifically, but the staff was assuming it was not going on for a referendum. And maybe we just need to make sure that's a consensus of the board, that it was not going on in November. And I don't think past that I'm comfortable making any recommendations, unless there's something emergency wise that happens over at Oakton that, we need to take care of right away. But that wouldn't be a referendum project. So most likely, but I feel like from the discussion last time, what we took out of it is that it was delayed and it wouldn't be going on the November referendum, and that we would regroup once we knew what the new normal was going to be. So if we want to get a consensus on that, maybe we need to do that at the next meeting, probably, because it's not an agenda item.
Well, it's also entirely possible that I missed that there was a consensus on it, and I just missed that part. Okay, so I'm perfectly willing to correct my comments today, but I didn't think we talked specifically about the November ballot. I think it was understood in my mind that we were not going to go on for November, but I don't know that we talked about it.
I think you're correct. I don't think it was in the motion. It was just kind of put a hold on it for now. So I think that's a good point, and we can, if you'd like, we can put it on the agenda for next time to have a formal consensus on that. Is that what you'd like me to do?
Yes.
Okay. Great. We're on new business, right?
We are. Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Again, I want to reiterate to the board that your support is so important, and it's been very, very appreciated by me during this. And we are doing, as you know, the best we can with the situation, but having your support has meant a lot to me. So I just wanted to thank you publicly for that.
You're doing a great job. So is your staff. They really are. This moving target thing is amazing, and your ability to take. This isn't supposed to be a big feel-good thing, but I think your ability to take charge of the situation and make precise, definite comments, rules or regulations, or as soon as you had the information to you, you need to be commended for that. I didn't say that very well, but I think you knew what I meant.
No, I appreciate it. I got it.
And I enjoy chasing kids out of the park, so it's fine. It's all been great.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's gonna be. You're gonna be busy the next month. That's all I have.
All right. Well, there's certainly no playbook for this. So thank you to you for your leadership and your leadership team as well, kind of thinking through all the scenarios here and being really thoughtful in the process. All right. With that, I don't think there's anything else to discuss this evening. I hope everyone stays healthy. And I move to adjourn the meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners.
Second.
Yeah. Thank you for the second, Commissioner Tunnell. It's great to see you.
Good to see everyone.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Hearing none. Is this when the house party starts and we get to play games now and be social with each other now that our board meeting is officially over and adjourned? I think the first virtual meeting went well, everyone.
Okay, goodbye, everybody. I'm going to stop it.
Goodbye. We're stopping it before
Margaret.